forgiveness
three,
in the hills of love,
five, six, seven,
on the sea of love.
nine.
Love's gonna get you, baby.
Great. Thank you, Reverend Tony, and thanks everyone for being here. And a special shout out to my mom, who's joining us from Sarasota, Florida, where I think they just got through a tropical storm / hurricane about a week ago. So they came out fine, but welcome everyone. And thank you for being here for my talk. The title of my talk today is The Risks and Rewards of a Miraculous Life. And I chose this topic for my talk today because, as some of you, if you're my Facebook friends or in my kind of friend circle, know that last Monday I came back from an adventure, a 13-day adventure through Northern California, Northern Nevada, Southern Utah, Death Valley, went through the Mojave Desert, and then kind of ended my trip in Pasadena, California, with my brother and sister-in-law. And it really, truly was a miraculous experience from the beginning to end. And it just made me realize, like, as being students of A Course in Miracles, we do have this miraculous life. It's like, I think sometimes I'm like, why don't more folks, I want to give it away to more folks, like to have this amazing, if we can use the modern word, this amazing spiritual technology of the Course in Miracles, where, hey, whenever we're not feeling so good, we can just ask for another way of looking at it, And yeah, sometimes it's harder than others, but it's truly miraculous. So I'll start the miracles that I experienced in my miraculous journey with this. I had planned before the pandemic to go to Europe this summer. I had the money saved up, and I was going to go to Prague, Budapest, and Berlin. That's where I wanted to go because I hadn't been to any of those cities. And especially Prague has always been on my mind as this place. It has these amazing buildings, old ancient buildings and churches. And I think in the most recent Spider-Man, it was also the city that they kind of where a lot of the action took place. It just looked amazing. But as we all know, pandemic happened, and we're not able to travel. And so, of course, as you know, I could feel bad about that, or I could get angry or bitter about that, or whatever, sad. But I didn't really have that experience. But I did have the experience of like, geez, my summer school teaching was ending July 15th. What was I going to do? And a friend of mine, who was also a teacher, had ventured out through the regions I just asked, except he spent a lot of time with friends and family in Colorado, but he was planning to do Southern Utah as well. And he suggested I go on this little adventure. And I thought to myself, yeah, but I only have 3 weeks. And, like the ego did really speak to me. And in today's reading that, as was already said, Reverend Vincent read so well, the Course in Miracles says, fear of the will of God is one of the strangest beliefs the human mind has ever made. That's pretty profound. So really, anytime we're experiencing fear, it's a strange belief to God and to our, who we really, really are. But, our ego likes to talk to us, and it likes to tell you, well, you could save the money. You're going to be going by yourself. You're going to feel lonely. What happens if the car breaks down? What happens if you meet those folks from Deliverance, like the movie in Deliverance, how it could be in Northern Nevada and Southern Utah and yada, you know what I mean? Like our egos are pretty wild, they're pretty crazy. So, I thought of, I had those thoughts. And of course, the other thought was, there's so much to do. There's so much to do. Reverend Tony's going to get mad at me because I won't get my house job done. I'll be gone too long, blah, 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 blah. Now, Reverend Tony doesn't really get mad at me, but, you think about all the responsibilities you have. I could, get the car fixed, blah, 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 all these things. But you know what? I just said, no, I'm going. And, I just knew that it was it was the right thing to do. And it really, it really was a miraculous trip in many ways. So I'm just gonna, like, the first thing was Tahoe. So South Lake, I went up to, drove up to South Lake Tahoe. And here we talk about perception. I didn't have a real positive experience with South Lake Tahoe, to be honest with you. Actually, Reverend Vincent and I went there once on a little mini vacation, and his friend was supposed to teach us how to snowboard. And neither of us did it really well, but I in particular fell a lot. And my body the next day was never so sore than that. I mean, it was worse than when I played college football and the day after a game. It was so sore because I fell so many times. And so I've never been one for ice places like winter resorts or anything like that. It just never has been my ilk. I've always preferred sports and activities on the earth and ground. I'm grounded. I like those kinds of experiences. So anyway, that was my perception. But I got up there and I stayed. It was a hotel that was right near the strip in South Lake Tahoe, and it felt like the extension of Bay Area. People were friendly. They were doing the socially distanced thing. Restaurants, there was a lot of outside restaurants, and everyone was just kind of really friendly. And the other thing, now, if you've ever been up to Lake Tahoe, it's a really beautiful place. And so I took this hike, and I had some miracles on the hike. First of all, finding the hike. My GPS was wrong, and so that was one problem. And then when I got to the trailhead, it said the campground was full. Please do not enter. And so, of course, I interpreted that as meaning, oh, I can't go in. So I drove away, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And of course, I got the thought, why don't you go back and ask and see if you can go in to do the hike, And that's how it is. Now, my mom's here. That's exactly what my mom would have told me as well. So it's the Holy Spirit or my mom. They're both the same, right? But, that was like the first miracle I had. So I found the trailhead, and it was this amazing 4-hour hike that I took. I didn't make it all the way because I had time constraints, but it was beautiful. It was just simply beautiful hike. It was all along the coast of one end of the of Lake Tahoe, and it's great. I had my mask, and it's really tough to hike with a mask, but I would just put it on when people came by. And some people, you stand to the side, and people really appreciate that. And it was just a beautiful, really beautiful experience. And it's just great. And what it reminds me is that whatever people's belief systems are, when you pull them out of their lives and put them in a place of beauty, which is really what we all are, in those minds, that we're not that different, folks. We really are not that different. We are really, what we want is we want peace. We want fellowship. We want connection with others. And you can really see that when we're pulled out of kind of that ego world sometimes, where we're just, running off to do the next thing and facing pandemics and economic problems and personal problems and so on and so forth. So it was a really beautiful, beautiful experience. So my next part of my journey after Tahoe was I had to confront driving on Route 50 East through northern Nevada to get to my ultimate destination, which was these national parks in southern Utah. Now, in case you don't know, I learned this, but Route 50 East is nicknamed the loneliest highway in America. That's literally what it's nicknamed in. And I think it's about a 7 or 8 hour drive beginning, once you get on it from Tahoe to where I was trying to go. And I was a little concerned about that. And again, the ego is chattering away, and the ego is telling me, oh, what if your car breaks down? I went online, there aren't a lot of towns between Lake Tahoe and Utah, but there were some. And my friend sent me a couple pictures of one of the towns. It was Austin, Nevada. And he's like, you better not stop here. He was showing me some pictures. And so it was really, really kind of funny. But, I still had these concerns, and I'm like, I got to make sure I don't run out of gas. And I'll tell you, folks, I drove that, I put on some good music. I think actually I pulled off and I had a good conversation with Reverend Tony because we had to talk about something. And it was the freest that I felt in the entire trip. I mean, I was moving in the car, there's no one out there and you can go pretty fast and there's, and it was just like, I was like, wow, I just really experienced a lot of freedom doing that, like just on the road. And so here, I had this idea. I did not feel lonely for 1 second on the loneliest highway in the world, didn't feel lonely at all. It was just amazing. And the reason is because I gave myself permission to have the miracle, to do the adventure. The risk was, countering that voice for the ego and accepting it. And the reward was that I had this incredible feeling of freedom. Course in Miracles says this: freedom is the only gift you can offer God's Son, being acknowledgement of what they are and what He is. Freedom is creation because it is love. So we all know, as Course in Miracles student, it doesn't matter, like I gave that gift to myself. It doesn't matter if I'm giving that gift to you or to me, we're all the same, And so I had given that gift of freedom to myself because I chose for love. I did not choose for the ego, which had all these judgments about going on the loneliest highway in America. So, we just basically had that kind of experience. Now, you're doing these adventures and I did actually that evening. I remember I got into, there was actually a park. I stayed at a kind of like a trailer park hotel that evening in some other national park that was at the edge of Nevada. And that night I had class with our Thursday night class. It was the Thursday night class, and Reverend Vincent, I think, ended up having to take over it because my connection wasn't all that great. But I remember that was a little bit of a harder evening because I was having trouble connecting the class, and that was making me cranky. And I felt like the Wi-Fi wasn't that great. But it was like, all right, get over yourself. And I just had a plan for the next day's adventure. And so after that, I was moved on and went into southern Utah, which was where all these amazing kind of parks are. So there's many parks there, but there's 4 that I visited: Zion, Bryce Canyon, Arches, and Canyonlands were the 4 that I went in southern Utah. And if you need any description of it, just watch the movie Mars with Matt Damon. And that's kind of like what the color of the landscape was in those parks, and some of them anyway. But they were all truly amazing, unbelievable natural beauty. At one point I was driving towards Zion and I'm like, I'm getting there and I'm not seeing anything. And I was talking to another friend on my phone. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what this is all about. I don't really see anything. And then all of a sudden I see these massive rock formations, huge, like glacial cliffs, off in the background, and they're red and they got these different colors. And, so it was just kind of like that, this other kind of experience that I had. And so, again, it was really great. And one of the significant things I did, which was really important, was hiking. And I had this kind of experiences that, hiking, you have a lot of time to yourself. And for most of the hikes, I had that. Even though it was the summer season, because of the situation in the country with the virus, the attendance to these parks is really down. Even the park that I went to, Zion, which I called like the Disneyland of the national parks out there, was only at 30% attendance. One of the folks at the from the National Park Service told us. So it was really down, although it was really crowded. And I went on one hike there, and it was the Canyon Narrows. It was actually, I did a hike through a river, and most of the time, it was just like a slow moving river, but it required a lot of skill, a lot of attention, because there were rocks everywhere, and my feet got beat up. I mean, I was sore as can be. But what was cool about it is at times I was up to water in my chest, and up here, up to my neck at one point. And it turned out that I wanted to get all the way to the end because there was a waterfall. But I was 3.5 hours into the hike and my shuttle was coming back for me in like 3.5 hours. So I was like, they said, make sure you're back in time for your shuttle. So I turned around, went back, and I was a little disappointed by that, but then it was like, no, the object was to undertake the journey, right? That was what it was about. And yeah, I didn't get to my destination. And if I go back next time, I'll know what to do. But, I just turned around, I hoofed it back. And I don't think I was probably the most miracle-minded person coming back because I was running into a lot of fellow slower human beings. And by that time, I had started the hike at like 7 a.m. And, there was a lot of people now. This was a really popular hike. But, anyway, I made it. I was exhausted. I got home. I was probably dehydrated and all that. But the miracle was that I did it. And then my friend of mine, I met my friend later in Zion. He was he was actually coming through now from his trip. So we had a nice time together, chatting and whatnot, and we went on with our day. So yeah, the hikes were really amazing. And I think what I learned from the hikes was this notion of prayer, like it said in our reading. I really got this idea, what Course in Miracles says, which is in one of the pamphlets. In the Song of Prayer, this is what it says: prayer has no beginning and has no end. It is a part of life. And when you're on a hiking trail by yourself, you really get this idea like, yeah, this is really, really true. You're either praying to spirit or you're praying to the ego, and I shared with my Thursday night class, there were times like I had some challenging memories come up. I share with folks, like I was thinking about like things in high school and college, like just people that I had lost touch with, and I said, it kind of bothered me a little bit. It's like I used to be good friends with these folks and I lost touch with them. And but what did I do? I just forgave it. That's what you do in the Course of Miracles. You forgive it. Okay, forgive it and see what happens. Well, don't you know, I swear to you, this is the God's honest truth. After that, I had all these people on Facebook from my college start friending me. And, it was just like, oh, the block was taken away. And then I had another friend from the town I grew up in, Maple Shade, who reached out to me on Facebook, and we had a phone conversation. I ended up having a phone conversation on one of my ways home. So, folks, we're all connected. The miracle is, the miraculous life is that as we drill down into it, we are all kind of connected, and we're praying all the time. And, the only thing is like, and this is not to say anything judgmental or demeaning, but when we're worrying and when we're fearing and when we're judging, which is a big character flaw of mine, we're praying to the ego, and we're manifesting, what do we get in our lives? If we're judging others, we're judging ourselves. And so how do you feel when you're judging yourself? You don't feel so good, And that was one thing that I really got on this amazing trip. And so one thing I can recall at the end of the hikes, I had a couple experiences. One hike I did a hike outside, who knows, but outside of Las Vegas, there's this mountain that you can hike. It's called Mount Charleston. I did this hike out when I hit Vegas on my way, kind of coming back. And it was 90 plus degrees. Now, Las Vegas was 110. But Mount Charleston was a little higher, so it was a very seasonable 95 degrees to do this hike in. And I picked a hike that, it's a loop. It says it's called the North Loop, so I picked it. Well, it's 30 miles. So so I figured it out, and I just did an abbreviated version. But it was a tough hike in the beginning. I fell down a couple times because it was so steep getting into it. And, but then I got to the portion of the hike where it leveled off, and then I had to come back. And the miracle was that I had to decide, like, I knew I had to go back up this steep canyon, right? And because that's how I got in. And so I said, okay, or there was a way to walk up the road. It would have taken longer, but I could have chickened out and done that. And I was like, no, you started the hike, you're going to finish the hike, you know? So, and I always said, well, if I can't make it, I can just always come back. You know, it's no big deal, right? So I took the hike. I made a couple wrong turns here and there, but I corrected myself, and I got back. And, you know, I went up that really steep hike, and I just decided, you know what, I can take breaks. You know, normally I just want to get it done, right? I'm just going to power through it. But like, hey, every, you know, like 20 yards, I just took a break, took some water and got up. And when I got done that hike, folks, I think I experienced ecstasy. I was just so, like, literally, I was like, I did it, you know, and it was probably the last major hike I was going to do as well on this trip. And it was really amazing. And it was kind of like after the canyons hike too, I felt that way. So like my experience was I had hikes that were either like the ecstasy or the serene hikes, the ones that brought like today's lesson, the peace of God. So it was really, really amazing experience. So, and then the last part of my journey, I went to see my brother, and it was really kind of funny because, you know, I love my brother, and he has a wonderful wife, and they were here actually my last talk. And but, you know, we have different worldviews, and he's more of a kind of like has a business perspective on life. And you know, he probably voted differently in the last election that I did. He actually did. And so we were getting into this, you know, we always get into conversation, but we have civil conversations about the world. And, you know, he's very much a free market guy, you know, so he's very much, that's how he looks at the world. I'm kind of a progressive. I don't look at it that way. Work in public education. And we had this conversation, but what was really funny was that he in our conversation, he found out like he likes Andrew Cuomo, and he wants Andrew Cuomo to be the Democratic candidate. He would vote for him. And I said, oh my God, we actually agree on something, because I really like Andrew Cuomo, and that's who I wanted the Democrats to nominate for the presidency. So I said, miracles abound, right? Like, who knew that my brother, who's like a free market kind of conservative business point of view, that we would have the same perspective on something. So it was really, really amazing. And of course it was great connection. And so when we, you know, the essence I want to leave you with is that, you know, we can all, and we all do, we have to acknowledge this, we all do live miraculous lives. And maybe it doesn't always have to look like that on the outside, but on the inside, you know, the love and the peace and the joy. And just know, you know, I met a lot of different people on this trip. You know, most people in Southern Utah probably were not the kind of folks that, you know, that I would normally hang out with, but I talked to them in restaurants. I met them on the trail. And, you know, folks, we're not all that different. We just have to let go of this. We have to let go of those beliefs that we feel like separate us from others. And that's what the Course is always, always telling us. And so I really had that experience of just claiming the miracle, forgiving the obstacles to peace, forgiving anything that a judgment that separated us all. And that's how you experience it. And what do you get when you do that? You get connection, you get peace, you get joy, you get happiness. And, you know, that ain't so bad. So my hope for you is that you risk the miracle and that you experience the rewards of the miracle as well. And that's my talk for today. Thank you.
How beautiful you are. How beautiful you are. All my forbidden fruits, I've got to keep on feeding like a dog in a cage. And now you lie here like honey in the palm of my hand.